Welcome to the Art Center's conversation from the Corinne Woodman Gallery. We have two artists here, Robin Silver, who is exhibiting for the first time in the Art Center, but you must, if you were not blind, you have seen her work hanging around Corvallis for the last half year. Robin creates what I call visible music by taking an old, or not old, I don't know, she will tell you about that, taking an instrument and just letting her collage genius go on that. And Lauren Ohlgren, who does all kinds of different artwork, but this time around is showing urban sketching and travel sketching. And so it is really concentrated on her sketchbook. So here we go. Robin, I mentioned that you have visual music. So could you describe how you became an artist decorating these musical instruments and how that happened?
Yes. Well, can you hear okay? Yes. My children are professional musicians, and when they were younger, we would go to zillions of music festivals together, and there were always or often booths set up with just incredibly beautiful painted guitars and violins, and I was always awestruck by them. They were just absolutely gorgeous, and I started thinking, ooh, that really looks like fun. And I like to paint, but I've always enjoyed collage more, so I started dabbling with that on old trashy instruments that couldn't be played, and I only had done maybe 3 of them 10 years ago, and then when some drama entered my life a few years ago that was really upsetting for me, I found therapy in just putting my whole heart and soul into just every day, just spending hours on the instruments. And so it's only been within the last 2 years that I've made maybe 30, 35 instruments. And they've either been donated to me, or secondhand stores, or eBay.
Lauren, what made you do sketchbooks showing this year?
So I had an opportunity to show pretty much what I wanted on the Corinne Woodman 2 gallery, which if you don't know where it is, it's in the offices on this wall. And I could have brought in my fine art, the things that come out only for gallery shows, for sale. But I've been teaching travel journaling classes since around 2005, 2007 through LBCC, private students, and rafting trips. And I thrive on giving other people access to that part of their world. For some people, you're experienced artists, you do your fine art, but maybe don't take enough time for sketching. For new artists or for people new at drawing, I love giving them that window to that world and getting them to sketch. And I've increased my own excitement about it, enthusiasm towards sketching this year, this spring and summer. And I wanted to put up more of a educational, inspirational show to get other people doing the same thing as opposed to just showing my own work. I also think drawing is the basis of most of our artwork. Even as my work moves more into abstract, non-representational, I still love to draw, whether it's figure drawing or drawing, these whimsical sketches that I mostly do for speed, and on location drawing in the journals. It feeds a different part of my brain, too.
Robin, so you do collage, which is one of those techniques that you don't do sketching for at all. But how do you, well, maybe that's not true. Do you make a sketch of if you have a...
No, I don't use sketching, but I play around a lot with imagery to see what works and what doesn't, and how they flow, images flow together. When I first started doing a lot of collage, I hadn't really made use of repetition, but you might have noticed from some of my instruments hanging, I've really visually when I find an image that really works, I really have had fun with just repeating that image in the collage. I use a combination of old books, magazines, some Pinterest, just a combination of whatever I can get my hands on. Well, people have asked me sometimes to make them an instrument of a theme, like the Labrador one that I did. But other than that, I'll just pick artists that I've always really enjoyed. And in terms of the themes, I spend hours a day just thinking, oh, women reading books. Oh yeah, I wanna find images of that. So I have like 50 different categories already saved for future instruments that I just think would be fun themes to explore. Yeah, I have some more cellos I'm working on, and a musician friend of mine donated them to me because they were totally not playable. The scroll was missing or a big crack in it. I mean, it's the perfect way to recycle instruments.
So speaking of color, Lauren, I read your instructions or some of the cards that you have next to your work about that educational part, and you mentioned there limited color palette. Why do you want to limit us in color?
That's a very good question. So one of the things I want to come back to is that the drawings that are in the show and the ones that I focus on are on location drawings. So I'm not sitting at home looking at photographs of things and taking my time and planning it out. So today I showed up a couple hours early and found this huge kids festival event going on out in Central Park. A couple hundred kids literally playing some kind of a Red Rover type game. And I'm like, oh my God, I could just go find a cup of coffee and not sketch, or sketch in a coffee shop, right, where everybody's sitting still. So what do? I pull out my pen, of course, and set up my little stool. The stool that's right over there. And I just do what I can. So drawing on location is incredibly challenging. And that's probably why I continue to push myself to get more comfortable with it. You have to move your hand very fast. You have to let go of the judgment. You know, the eye fills in the story, right? So you don't have to have everything right. You have the general information there, and the eye fills it in and sees the movement and sees everything going on. Then, you know, I travel with a bag that's only that big. And when you're traveling, you know, your ideas are like, I should bring 7 brushes, 3 pencils, 7 pens, and every color I own, even if it's in a small container, but it ends up being a lot of weight. So I had been doing a lot of reading about what some other very talented, well-known urban sketchers do. And they often limit the colors they bring for the place they're going. So if they're going to the Caribbean, you know, they're going to see different blues in their palette. And I thought, the watercolor is really secondary to me. The story and the sketching is what I focus on. I'm not a watercolorist. It's just the only thing that's easy and not too messy to travel with. And so I thought, what do I need 24 colors for? You know, going to New York is where we went recently. And so I spent some time and narrowed my colors down to 6 colors plus white, and was just fine with it. I had my 3 cools, my 3 warms, and a white. And I will say I missed a bright red, but that was about it. So a lot of that in there was done on a limited palette, but was for traveling in a little tiny mint box that was only 2 inches by 2.5 inches. And then when I come home, those all come out, they go into my regular set, which is 24. So the kind of paints I use are called Halfpans. So all of these little tiny squares are called Halfpans. You can buy them that way, or you can make them. So it's difficult to just buy a small one. So typically when you know you've used one enough, you buy the brand that you like in a tube, and then you make your own. So I just let it dry in the half pan. Yeah, I squeeze it in, it's all pudding-like, and I expose it to the air for a while, and within a couple days you can travel with it. Within a couple weeks it's hard. Not all artists, especially the professional ones, like them when they get hard, so they are trying to work with fresher tube paints all the time. But this works just fine for me. I really am just going for the essence of this, adding to my story and the essence of my page with the watercolor. It's not a focus of mine. Yeah, because they're watercolors, right? All you have to do is you could mist them, or you just touch your brush to them and the colors just explode off it. I mean, if you use high quality, this isn't kid grade stuff. This little kit with 3/4 of these was a $75 investment. So, and then I've added my own colors to it. So,
My challenge is getting the imageries to flow in a way where it works, where there's movement and connectedness. I've had to rip up pieces after I finished it because I thought it was going to work, but when I had all the images down, it just didn't, from my eyes anyway. So that's definitely the biggest challenge. So my process is, well, spending a lot of time searching for imagery that catches my eye. I'll often, for one instrument, have like 300 images that catch my eye. And I print them out in all different sizes, and I cut them out. So I don't have to eyeball it. I can actually lay them down as I would want them. And then I lay them down, and I have all these choices to choose from. I only use a very small amount of those few hundred images, but by having all the choices, I can find form or color that'll fit just here or there. Yeah, my dining room table is just kind of, always has instruments laying on it, like an operating table. It's my studio, and I teach violin lessons, and have had fun. I've had some of my students, because my students see the work all the time, and the ones that are really drawn to it, I've invited them to come over and collage instruments with me. So I try to save small clunkered instruments so that I can get young kids involved with it too.
So we're getting close to our time, and I wanted to ask you my last question. If money and space was not something you had to think about, can you think of an artwork that you would really like to own?
it just wouldn't be. I'm going to have to say the one that just keeps coming back to me, and it could be because he's an Oregon artist, but his work just absolutely evokes emotion in me, is Rick Barlow. And to be able to own a very large Rick Barlow in my life would be wonderful.
I guess for now I would have to say I love Ruth Bernhardt's photography. I used to do a lot of black and white nude photography, and I would love to have more than just a poster of hers hanging up, which I do have. Yeah.
Well, I would really like to thank you both. It is really interesting to listen to two artists with very different approaches and very different media to tell us about how they get to where they are. So thank you very much. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Greg.